So next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Here it is. And it's the dumbest bill in America. And it is banning plastic forks. Yes, you heard that correctly, podcast listeners. Banning plastic forks in Washington, D.C. Yes. So the Washington, D.C. government, not the federal government, but the local government in Washington, D.C. that governs the city of Washington, has a mayor and a city council, and they passed the Zero Waste Omnibus Amendment Act. And they passed that in December of 2020, but the bill goes into effect in 2022. In other words, January 1st of 2022. So the bill's now been in effect for about, not quite a week, about a week or so. And it's called the Zero Waste Omnibus Amendment Act. And the District of Columbia's goal of 80% waste, by the way, I'm reading from the DC's website. This is in their own words. The District of Columbia's goal of 80% waste diversion from landfills and incinerators by 2032. The act prohibits food service entities, meaning restaurants and carry-out places, from providing accessory disposable food service ware items unless first requested by the customer. The new requirements will save businesses time and money, according to DC. Yeah, sure. While also cutting down on unnecessary waste that ends up in landfills or incinerated or as pollution in the local rivers. So this bill was pushed by Trash Free DC and ZeroWasteDC.gov. And the bill basically says that the items regulated, which means banned, are utensils, including chopsticks, napkins, condiment packets, straws, and stirrers. And the law applies to the following establishments: restaurants, bars, cafeterias, carryout, schools, religious institutions providing free coffee or food to parishioners at a service, hospitals, nonprofits that serve food, unsure where your organization, institution, or government or group is regulated, or you need assistance, you can call DC, of course, but those are the basic ones that are going to be affected by this. And here is the law. The law says that when someone orders food from your establishment, and let's say it's a carry-out order, and the individual comes to pick up their food, that you cannot provide forks or utensils or napkins or condiments or straws or chopsticks unless the person actually requests them affirmatively. So I presume in DC, you're going to have the utensil police, and they're going to make random calls to restaurants and churches and hospitals and cafeterias and carryouts and bars. And they're going to order food, and they're going to say, oh, wait a minute. I just ordered that food, and I'm with the DC Utensil Police, and you did not ask me, Mr. Restaurant, whether or not I wanted utensils. Since you did not ask me, then I'm going to fine you. And guess what the fine is, podcast listeners? It's $500. It's a $500 fine to the bar, to the restaurant, to the cafeteria, to the religious institution, to the hospital. And here is why this is so stupid. This is so stupid because I'm like you. I'm sure I would never remember to ask for plastic utensils when I'm at work and I decide to DoorDash something or decide to carry something out myself. And don't you think that there's already an incentive in place for the restaurants to provide less stuff because it would save them money automatically? I think they kind of already do that. But there's even more to this story. So yesterday, as recently as yesterday, I drove from Maryland to Washington, D.C. via the Parkway. Okay? So I got onto the parkway, and there's this parkway that takes you past Andrews Air Force Base. And then eventually this Suitland Parkway is what it's called, takes you to Washington, D.C. So again, the parkway starts right around Andrews Air Force Base, and then it ends up dead-ending into Washington, D.C. You enter Washington, D.C. like only a couple miles into the parkway, just to let you know. Why does this matter? It matters because as I was driving down this parkway in Washington, D.C., there was trash along this parkway that you just couldn't believe. Everything and anything under the sun. Clearly, the people who are walking along the parkway, clearly the people that are driving cars and that live in these areas of this parkway in Washington, D.C., just throw trash on the ground all the time. And it has accumulated to the point that you can't possibly imagine. And I know what you're going to think, podcast listeners. Well, then that's why we need to ban plastic forks and plastic utensils. No. We need to fine people instead for throwing trash on the ground. And we need to educate them about why that doesn't make sense, because the issue is properly disposing of trash and finding ways to recycle it, not to ban these things. Okay? Innovation solves the problem, as we've talked about many times in Mark and the Millennials. But in addition to that, if you see a lot of trash on the side of your streets, what is the first thing you think? Oh, I need to ban that. No. What you want to do is figure out a way of getting these individuals from stop polluting, from stop throwing things out their window, walking along the street. I mean, how many times have you seen someone who go to a fast food place and they're walking along the street and they're eating the French fries because they live nearby, and they're walking home and they just like throw the French fry box out of just right on the ground. And you say to yourself, who would do that? Well, see, on the left, what they think is we need to ban the box that holds the French fries. That's what we need to do. And on the right, we say, no, we need to hold that individual accountable for polluting and fine them. And in addition to that, if you want to create incentives for recycling, that's great. But if you want to create incentives for recycling, you still need people to put the trash items in the bin and not on the ground. And that really is the issue. But in DC, of course, they've got the plastic fork police that are going to call you and say, oh my God, you own that carryout and you provided me a plastic fork even though I did not ask for it. And therefore, here's a $500 fine. This shows you how messed up the left is. They're completely blind, and so are these zero-waste D.C. people who, if they just drove along Suitland Parkway in Washington, D.C. and saw the vast amount of trash on the side of the road, a parkway, right? Parkways were supposed to be beautiful. That's why they're established in the United States. They're supposed to be parkways, like a park, thus the name Parkway. Clean, beautiful, pristine, tree-lined. Well, this parkway is tree-lined, and it used to be pristine and beautiful, but the current mayor of Washington, D.C., and the idiots that run that city have run it into the ground, which is why more people as a percentage have moved out of Washington, D.C. since the pandemic than any other city in America. It has the largest decrease in population of any city in America by a percentage. And yet they don't see, with all this trash on the side of the road, that passing this stupid bill isn't going to fix the trash that people are dropping on the side of the road. Because that is a cultural problem. And to make sure I don't get myself in trouble, I'm not saying it is a white problem or a black problem. It is a cultural problem. It's a problem of culture. I see people do this all the time, no matter their color, and they throw trash on the side of the road, and it just needs to be enforced, and we need to provide an education, and we need to provide an incentive to recycle these things. And that's the dumbest bill in America, banning plastic forks. And that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Parler, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.